Hi, everyone. This is Courtney, one of the career coaches of the Re-Engagement Hub at Martha O'Brien, here with our second virtual workshop. This is part two in the series, Getting the Job, all about how and where to job search, how to apply to jobs, and how to ultimately get the job that you want and to retain that job and move forward. So today we are in Ace the Interview. We're going to be talking all about interviews, what to wear, how to answer questions. We're going to have some discussion, watch some videos. So this should be a good time. And I have our peer support worker, Darius, with us. Hi, Darius.
Hello, what's going on, everybody? How you doing, Courtney?
Doing well. So we'll get started, if I can, just a little bit more about the Re-Engagement Hub for anyone who's not enrolled who may be watching this video. We offer career coaching that's one-on-one for 17 to 24-year-olds who live in Davidson County. You'll have a coach that you're paired with who kind of serves as your mentor. We help with things like resumes, interview skills, job searching, and getting you connected to other services that are going to help you succeed in whatever your goals are. We have two peer support workers, Will and Darius. Darius, do you want to tell them a little bit about what you do as a peer support worker?
Yeah, so the role of a peer support worker is basically sounds like how it sounds. We're here to support any youth, opportunity youth who needs some type of support. We're also here to try to just get the word out about the hub as well. Um, So that leads us to things like making flyers and doing stuff like that. But our main goal and our main priority is to make sure that our enrollees and that our participants are taken care of and that they're feeling right uh, mentally, so they don't feel like they're going on a journey alone.
Absolutely. You're not alone when you're in the Re-Engagement Hub. Thank you, Darius. And of course, we also offer career workshops and trainings like the one we're doing now, or helping you connect to trainings that's like getting a certification, getting into another program, or navigating the process to get into school. We help you with all of those different kind of workshops and trainings and skill building. So one of the most important things about a job interview is that this is your opportunity to make a first impression on the employer. So what is a time, this is a question for Darius, that someone made a good first impression on you, and what did they do that made a good first impression?
Now thinking about it, um, a time where I had a good first impression, um, I would have to say, like, I want to say like when I had, it's not like the first time, but I would say it's been like twice. So one time was when I had the interview at Martha O'Brien, but the only reason why I think it was a good first impression because I knew Miss Robin already, so me and her already had a great relationship. Um, but so I'll try to talk about a different time to where people who probably don't know the interviewer, I would have to say it was honestly when I was working at Finish Line, and um, a great like tool that they use is that I love sneakers, I love tennis shoes, so they made me feel real comfortable with just talking about like what's my favorite shoes, um, how do I feel about what's coming out. So it just made me feel like that they cared about my opinion and uh, yeah, they just wanted to make sure I was comfortable in the work environment.
Good, good. Well, for me, sometimes that people have made a good first impression, I want to include both Darius and Will, our other peer support worker. In your job interviews, I was there for both of those, and you were both on time. You were both like had a relaxed posture, smiling, engaged, and showing your personalities. So that's what really made a good first impression on me. So for your role, personality is big. You just were yourself. You weren't like faking it or being robotic, and you didn't seem too nervous. So, and you both ended up being great additions to the team. So I think ultimately, like being yourself, being as natural as you can. In an interview setting, it is a little more formal. So you may, want to work on your posture and how you might say things, how you might phrase things in a more professional way. But it'll definitely be apparent if you are not being yourself or not being honest. So we love to see a little bit of your personality come out in an interview. Would you say you agree with that, Darius?
Most certainly. I think having your own personality makes you more genuine.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, when they're looking over who are the best candidates, they want someone who's their self, someone who's genuine, because you're going to be yourself the whole time you work there. You probably won't, be this uptight professional 24/7. There are moments for that, but you have to let your personality come out in the interview.
Good, good. So some easy ways to make a great first impression, or I should say some simple ways, some straightforward ways, because these things are not easy for everyone, but it's something that everyone can achieve with some practice. So the first thing is being on time. That is huge. I'd say if you have an interview, check in with the receptionist or other staff 5 to 10 minutes before your interview time. You don't want to get there super early, like an hour in advance, and be waiting in the waiting room. But if you can be on time, account for traffic or account for the time it takes to travel on the bus or to walk somewhere, that is a huge first impression. Like if you're late without, apologizing or having an explanation, that it can reflect kind of poorly on you.
Okay, I wanted to say something with that. I think uh, this is a great section just because some people are, excuse me, are such procrastinators, and that's unfortunate.
Mhm.
But I think also whenever you're on an interview on time, and if you do get the job, just keep being on time, because I was kind of struggling with, like, it was like a whole solid week. It was like we had the tornado, and I tried to come to work on time, but I got stuck with the tornado. And then a little after that week, I just kept like just running late to work for some odd reason. I would always go to bed on time, but I had another job at the moment, so that's what kind of made it hard for me. Is that also, I would say, like, make sure you schedule a time that's like appropriate for you for your interview, so that way you won't be rushing from one side of town to the next.
Yes, yes. So if they're asking if you can come to the interview at 8 a.m. and there's no way you can make it, like you can't get up that early, or that traffic is too bad on your side of town, or the bus is too slow or broken down, just let them know that's not a great time for you, and just be honest about that. There may be a time that you're not on time for an interview. I would say don't freak out about it. I had a personal experience where someone was coming in to interview at a place I was working, and she was late. She got lost, but she called when she realized that she was going to be late. She asked for directions when she came in. She was apologetic. She had an explanation, and we totally understood. And aside from that, she killed the interview and she got the job. So it's not always a deal breaker, but if it's something you can avoid or a stressor you can avoid, then that's great. So I think punctuality is super key. Some other keys are smiling, kind of being open with your body language, making eye contact if you can. That can be hard for some people. Some people have, neurodivergencies, they have autism or other things that make it hard to maintain eye contact or kind of know what's appropriate. So in those cases, I'd say do what's comfortable for you. If you have a friend or a family member that you can practice having an interview with to build some comfort, that's great. But some other ways besides eye contact that you can, make people know that you're engaged, that you're listening, is just being responsive, nodding, answering questions, other ways of showing that you're engaged. And I have this last bullet point that's firmly shake hands. Obviously, right now we're in a pandemic, so I think the handshake is probably on its way out. So I'd just say maintain your safety and comfort when it comes to shaking hands. Any thoughts about those points, Darius?
Yeah, I think they're great points. Definitely, you want to smile. Like, you can even talk about this as far as being like an online interview. You obviously want to be on time for an online interview. You want to smile on an online interview. Definitely make eye contact. but yes, I agree with the handshake part. It's like I think that may be out the door for at least about 2 to 3 years, unfortunately. But yeah, even like online, you'll probably just have to say like, thank you and ask a couple questions. That may have to replace a handshake online if I had to guess.
And you can kind of follow the interviewer's lead on that. If they don't feel safe shaking hands, you don't need to initiate that. Just be careful, basically. So those are some simple ways to make a great impression. So what to wear? I always get this question about interviews, and it can be a hard one. So in 2020, I'd say there's no one size fits all interview outfit, and what is appropriate for one job may not be appropriate for another. Like, say, Darius, if you are in charge of a preschool and someone came in wearing a full three-piece suit and tie outfit with a briefcase, do you think that would be appropriate, or that would look in place for that position, or do you feel like it would look a little odd?
Did you say I'm working at a preschool?
Yeah,
Okay. And someone comes on with a three-piece suit?
they've got a briefcase, they are like business. Would that look weird? Would it look out of place?
I think for a school setting, I think that would be fine for the interview. Now, I think for probably coming in for like, if they were like working, I think they would want to be more relaxed because you rarely see teachers like that now, like in the school setting. But I think for an interview, I think that would be fine. What
Hmm.
do you think?
I'd say my best advice is to research the industry standards, like Google teacher interview outfit, or Google, teacher work outfits, or whatever industry you're interviewing for, restaurant work outfits, and then dress like one notch nicer than a normal day on the job. So if a normal day on the job for you might be business casual, then business like a full suit may be appropriate. But if it is a very casual setting, then maybe just like a blazer or something more casual might be appropriate. But Google, Pinterest, these are great resources for figuring out what's appropriate for the different industry. Like, you don't want to be wearing something that makes you uncomfortable and unable to be open, but you do want to look nice and look your best for an interview. But I wouldn't let the outfit become a source of stress for an interview. More important than like what you're actually wearing is probably your presentation. Like, if your clothes are clean, free of stains, as wrinkle free as possible, that is really good. So I just have some examples. So we've got on the left more of like business casual, like you may see in a day at the office. Then on the right, we have more formal, full business attire suit. And either one of these may be appropriate for an interview depending on the setting. Like, both of these guys look great, look pressed, look put together, and like they're comfortable and they're going to make a good impression either way. And then we have these two ladies. We've got lady number one in the full suit, and then lady number two a little more casual in the blouse and skirt with the boots. Again, either could be appropriate for a job interview. I wouldn't have the hat and glasses on. Those are just really stylish. I wouldn't have those on in an interview, but the suit looks awesome. So it's really about your comfort and what you think is appropriate for the setting, but don't let it be a source of stress. Let's talk about the types of interviews. Darius, have you ever had anything other than an in-person interview, like a phone interview or a virtual interview?
Yeah, I've actually had a virtual interview. I can't think of the app we used, but it was an app. Funny story, this is for the NFL actually. Funny story, but they had some um special app that they use where they recorded the questions pre-recordedly, and then you would answer it on the webcam, but you had to dress up like a business casual. No, yeah, business I think, or business casual, one of. But yeah, that was one, and then I had a phone interview for them as well. So yeah, I've had a phone interview and an online virtual interview.
Were there any like interview settings or types of interviews that you felt most comfortable in, that you enjoyed the most?
I think just a normal regular interview is fine, but obviously with the climate we're in right now with the pandemic and all that going on, that's my preferred way, is just a regular face-to-face interview. But I guess like I felt real like weird doing the virtual interview, but I only say that because I only say that because they had like practice and rehearsal rounds. So yeah, you got to practice, but what if you mess up more than once, So it kind of put a lot of pressure on you to answer the right way.
Mhm. Mhm. So there are several types of interviews that are really popular, and some of these more like virtual phone and video interviews are becoming more popular because of the pandemic, and I think they'll remain popular because of the convenience for the employer and for the person being interviewed, at least in initial screenings. So a common interview type is phone interviews. This is usually a first interview, like a first round interview. The benefits are it can save time for the interviewer and the candidate. You don't have to travel. You don't have to worry about traffic or parking or anything like that that can make you late. But some of the disadvantages are, of course, if you're on the phone, you can't see that person's face. So you can't make eye contact, smile, or give other signals that you're listening, like, for example, nodding your head. But some ways to be successful in the phone interview are just to treat it as a regular interview. I'd say if you have a phone interview, get up, get dressed. You still can be on time. So that means you're, in your space, in a quiet place in your home or wherever you are. Make sure that you've been up before the phone interview. Like if the phone interview is at 9 o'clock, it's a good idea for you to be up at 8, exercise your voice. You definitely don't have that, just rolling out of bed, groggy voice. The interviewer will be able to tell, and it'll make you look a little bit less prepared than if you got up, warmed up your voice, had breakfast, maybe looked over the job description, gave yourself some time to meditate, some time to breathe. How do you feel about that advice, Darius?
Yeah, with phone interviews, I totally agree. You want to treat a phone interview like a regular interview. Like for instance, I think one time I had one a while ago. It's probably like a couple months ago. Um, I had like a phone interview. I think Robin had gave me a phone interview. That's what I'm thinking of. Robin gave me a phone interview before actually coming in. So literally what I did, like I was at my other job at the time. I had requested that day off just to be safe, so I could be in a safe environment. You always want to have a phone interview in a quiet setting. Never have a phone interview going on with, a TV in the background or with people talking loud. So yeah, I treat phone interviews just like regular ones.
I'd say, like, if you have roommates or you live with family members, let them know you have this interview going on at this time so they can turn the TV down, not be on the phone themselves. If you have kids, it would be great if you can have a friend or family member come over to watch them or maybe take them to the park while you're doing this interview. It's really important to limit distractions as much as you can because it can be a little harder to focus when you're like in your home on the phone. You can't see the person in front of you and you might easily zone out. So whatever you can do to kind of limit distractions is great, especially, in your home in that setting. So I'd say the most common interview type before the pandemic, this may have changed now, is just a regular old in-person interview. You go to the business, you go to the employer, they ask you questions, you're maybe one-on-one or with two people. So this is a really common interview that you may have in your career. Um, so an in-person interview, at least an initial interview, is usually one-on-one or maybe two people from the company and you, the interviewee. So some tips for this are to just treat the interview as a conversation between you and the interviewer and don't focus on impressing them. So the interview is a time to determine whether a job or a company is a good fit for you, just like the employer is, they're determining if you're a good fit for the role in the team. A lot of people get nervous in these kind of interviews. I know I have a lot of interview nerves. Darius, do you have any tips or any like thing you do to help with nerves around interviews?
A lot of deep breathing. That's one of the best tips that I could ever give is a lot of deep breathing. And I would say probably like 20 minutes before like you leave to go to the interview, do a lot of breathing again, like go over like your research, stuff like that, so you feel prepared. That's where my nerves came in at, is that sometimes I feel like I wasn't prepared for an interview,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes I would overthink it. Another good tip is just be yourself. That's really it. You don't have to try to force yourself on anybody. So I just like, it made me feel more confident at the end when I was interviewing and I was just being, just normal. And I wasn't trying to like fit a square inside of a circle peg hole, if that makes sense.
So you're just answering the questions in a way that are, honest and representative of your experience and your reality, who you are as a person. So that's again, that's like not focusing on impressing them, it's focusing on finding the best fit. So just like the employer is interviewing you to see if you're a good fit, you're kind of also interviewing them to see if it's a good fit for you. So that helping that mindset or developing that mindset can be really helpful in building your confidence, helping with nerves, and helping you, be more natural in this conversation. I know that's something Robin always says. Robin, who is the director of our college career department, always says about interviews is it's just a conversation, so not to be nervous. Another common type of interview is a panel interview. So that's an interview that would include the candidate, you, the person being interviewed, and three or more people from the company. This might be a common like second or third round interview. So say you've already had a phone interview or you've already had an in-person interview with one or two people to kind of screen you. This interview might be to determine if you are a good fit, if you can get along with the team, and let more people from the organization, meet you, get a feel for you, but you can also get a feel for kind of the culture of the company. Like if you're in an interview with three or four people, you can see if they're like smiling, if they're comfortable around each other, what kind of people you may be working around, what kind of personalities there are in this company. So it can be helpful for that. And it allows more people to give feedback on you, the candidate. So that can be really helpful in it not just being like one person's hiring decision. Have you ever been in a panel interview where it was three or more people, or have you had mainly like one-on-one or two-on-one interviews?
I've had a panel interview once. I think it was for the Titans. Like it was before I got the job at Martha O'Brien. And it was a lot of their like sales marketing team, I think. And what made it interesting is that with a panel interview, you can do a whole bunch of activities that you can't do with a one-on-one or a two-person interview. With the panel interview, what I find out is that they try to get like the most out of you. Like everyone asks a different question. Like someone asked, there's a like, if you were any animal, or like what animal would you be? Like just questions like that you don't think make sense, but they make sense in a way. And one of the activities that was done in a panel interview was a debate. Like that's where like it wasn't like obviously one with a like one like the interviewee with the interviewer. It was two of them, and what they did is that they set up like a debate, and like you have to debate, like what's your favorite sports movie, or that's how it was back then whenever I was on a panel interview. So it was more activity based, and then like I said, you just get more questions because there's a lot of minds working at the same time.
Mhm. That's really interesting. That sounds like kind of an intense interview experience. I've
It
heard,
was intense, but it was real different. That's what I liked about it, is that it was real different, and I've never like went through that before. But I guess that's what you get when you're, you know, interviewing for like an NFL team, I guess.
mhm. Definitely. I've had a few panel interviews that included like 4 or 5 people from an agency. Those can be a little more intimidating because it's like all eyes on you in the room. But I'd give you the same advice as if you had the one-on-one or the two-on-one interview, just to be yourself, be as comfortable as possible. There are a lot of people to look at in the room, so you can kind of like shift your gaze, make sure you're kind of looking at the person who's talking, but you don't have to be intense focused on one person. So that may be a little easier in that aspect. Another type of interview is a group interview. So this would be when there's like one interview or a panel and several candidates for a job. So this type of interview is sometimes used in retail or food service when there are a lot of positions available and you're not necessarily competing with the other people in an interview. It's just a way for the company to kind of best use their time. And it can be a good way of seeing how candidates interact in a group and handle teamwork. So it can be really good for that. And it can take some of the pressure off you if you're, again, not the one in the hot seat, the only one in the room and everyone is focused on you. So I had a group interview that was similar to the one that you talked about. It was really activity based. They wanted to see like how we were communicating with each other, how we were relating with one another, because the job was very much in a teamwork setting, a setting where you're with people all the time, something that required probably a lot of extroversion, like, being social, being able to put yourself out there, not being shy. So it can be a good way to see different personality traits come out in the group interview. So common interview questions and what employers really want to know. So every job is going to have different interview questions, but there are some that you can kind of always expect to hear in an interview. So Darius, what do you think is the most common interview question?
Tell me about yourself.
Absolutely. So I do have a quick video about how to answer the tell me about yourself question, because that can be a little daunting. Like, what do I talk about? Do I talk about, my hobbies? Do I talk about where I grew up? Do I give them my whole history? So she gives a great explanation of what employers were really looking for in this question and ways to answer. Oh, I lost her. Here we go.
Hey, it's Linda Rayner of lindarayner.com, career strategist, speaker, and coach. And in this video, I'm going to teach you 3 tips in order to answer the tell me about yourself interview question the right way so that you can stand out in front of hiring managers and ideally land more job offers. Now, before we begin, there are a couple of ground rules that you need to know before you can develop the perfect answer to this question. Rule number 1. Do not talk about your personal or family life. When someone asks you, tell me about yourself, they're not actually asking you to tell them about your personal life choices and the mistakes that you've learned from and how you got here as a human being. They're not actually asking you to tell them about yourself. They're actually asking you to tell them about your qualifications, your experiences, as well as why you're a good fit for this role. That's it. They just want to know about your professional background and experience in a nutshell. Rule number 2, do tell a story. Even though I said you shouldn't be telling them your life story, you do want to tell them your professional work story. I'll get into details about this a little later, but essentially a good professional work story means that it needs to be engaging, compelling, clear, and complete. So now that we've got the ground rules out of the way, let's move on to our 4 major tips on how to answer the tell me about yourself interview question. Okay, so let's start off with tip number 1. Tip number 1 is to give a snapshot of your work history. So what this means is you're going to go back in time to the earliest professional job that you've ever held, and you're going to start your story from there. So you're essentially going to describe what company you worked at, what the title was that you held when you were in that position, how long you stayed in that position for, and most importantly, what were your major responsibilities in that position. So for example, let's just say that you started off your career 5 years ago as a financial analyst. Okay, let's just make this up. Let's just use another accounting example. You started off your career as a financial analyst 5 years ago, and then you moved up to senior financial analyst, and now you're a finance manager. When you tell your story, you're going to start with your role as a financial analyst. And you're going to say something along the lines of, I started off my career as a financial analyst 5 years ago with XYZ company, where I performed full cycle accounting duties, month-end close procedures, and assisted with budgeting and forecasting on a monthly basis. So now you're going to do that for each and every one of your positions. You're essentially telling mini work snapshots for every position that you've held up to the current position that you're holding right now. Tip number 2, make your mini stories achievement oriented. So after you've told the employer about the company that you were at, the title that you held, the number of years you were there for, and the major responsibilities that you had in that position, you're then going to also describe one major accomplishment that you were able to achieve in that role. So I explained a lot about what accomplishments were in my previous video, Resume Hacks, How to Make a Resume Stand Out, which is in the link below. But at the same time, I'll explain it here. An accomplishment is any time where you have saved time, saved money, improved processes, improved profitability. I mean, anything where you've done something that has created a quantifiable, ideally quantifiable result for your company or your department. So to add on to our example, you would say, in that role, a major accomplishment I'm most proud of was that I was able to reduce the time spent on month-end procedures by developing an Excel model which automated a major accounting process. This resulted in a time savings of approximately 1 day per month. So you'll do both this tip number 2 and tip number 1 in conjunction with each other for every single position that you've held. Now on to tip number 3. Tell the employer what you know about this role. Once you've gone through your entire story and you've told the employer about your major roles as well as the accomplishments that you've achieved, it's now time to acknowledge to the employer what you know they need for this particular position that they're hiring for. So to continue on our example, you'll then say, I understand that for this position of finance manager that you're hiring for, you're looking for someone with strong process improvement skills. The reason why this is so important and that so many people don't do this is because what it does psychologically is that it tells the employer that not only are you aware of your abilities and your achievements, but that you're also aware of his or her needs as well and what they're looking for. And when you can say something as simple as just simply acknowledging, I'm aware that, you know, for this role you need process improvement skills and abilities, it's creating a connection with the employer. It's not you any longer just talking at them, you're talking to them. Finally, on to tip number 4. Tell the employer why you're the right fit for what they need. This is the icing on the cake. It's the cherry on top, and it's the one thing that many, many people do not even bother to say when they're answering this or many other interview questions. And that is to tell the employer to literally spoon feed them, to maybe even brainwash them into understanding why you are the one and only and perfect fit for this position. So to add on to our example, you would say something like, overall, due to my strong background and achievements in successfully identifying gaps and creating efficiencies, I am confident I'll be able to succeed in this role that you're hiring for. You need to tell the employer why you're the right fit for the job. If you don't end off with this, it's going to end off on a flat note. It's going to not be the most stellar response. It's just going to sound like everybody else's response. But in this case, you are making it very clear and specific, even without them having asked you why you're the right fit. You're literally just feeding it to them and telling them, I'm the right fit for the role, above all else. So now you know how to answer one of the toughest interview questions, but do you know if your resume stands out enough that...
So she gave some great advice in that video about like how to answer that question. But a lot of the young people we work with are really early in their careers. They may be interviewing for their first jobs or right out of school. So what if you don't have the work history, like you've been a financial analyst for 5 years, like Linda Reyna was talking about in that video? There are still things that you can draw on about your career and gaining experience that can answer that question. So talking about relevant school experiences, talking about your career interests and how they align with the job, and also talking about volunteer experiences you've had. A lot of people do service learning or they do volunteer stuff for school or clubs, and a lot of the experiences you have there can help you kind of answer those questions. So you can really focus on, why you're interested in a job, what skills you have can transfer, even if you don't have that career story to, answer the tell me about yourself question. There are still things that you can draw on from your life, through school, through volunteering, through other, stuff, the interests that you're developing. Would you agree with that, Darius?
Yeah, I definitely I think the video was helpful, but I do agree with this part, with talking about not having experience, because you are right. We do work with a lot of people who are fresh out of high school, or they're in that middle stage where they don't have enough experience. So I kind of equate it to someone like a scraper or like a scavenger. Just try to get as much information with your experiences that you can, no matter if that's volunteering, no matter if that's working contracted jobs, or just even if you have a hobby. Like if you love making YouTube videos, you can do that, use that as experience if you're trying to do for something digital. And then also, like I would say, just use school experiences. School gives you a lot of experience, but it's just what you do after school kind of makes or break you. And I feel like using these tools help you with that both ways.
Definitely. And if you need any help kind of answering this question or developing a script for yourself, that's something we can definitely help with in the Reengagement Hub. So some other common interview questions other than the big tell me about yourself questions might be, what are your greatest strengths? What would you consider to be your weaknesses? Which of your accomplishments are you most proud of? Tell me about a time that you failed, what happened, and what did you learn from? Talk about a time where you had a conflict at work, how did you handle it? And what kind of work environment do you need to be successful? So some of these questions are about your qualities. Some of these questions are about your behaviors. Some of these questions allow you to tell a story, like the tell me about a time. They want to hear, they want to hear a narrative about, how you handle conflicts or how you do whatever they're asking in the question. So practicing your storytelling skills, or even just Googling common interview questions for blank kind of interview, whatever interview it is, like a retail interview, a call center interview, even a school interview. It can be great to just look those up in advance and practice. If you have a friend or a family member you can practice with, or even just practicing in the mirror with yourself can be really helpful, so you're not blindsided by a question. Have you ever been asked any of these questions in an interview, Darius? And did a question ever throw you off in an interview?
Yeah, actually, I think I got a lot of these questions for the Martha O'Brien interview. I think one that I got was, I think it was either the one about talk about a time when you had conflict at work and how did you handle it. And I think the strengths and weaknesses, and those can catch you off guard. Definitely, because we're so focused on like uh the future of like working at the job that we forget about the past experiences that we had, and how those experiences can really benefit you in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Some of these questions are designed to be a little bit tricky. Like, you may get advice if an employer asks you what your weaknesses are, to give them a strength that's kind of phrased as a weakness. So you're not actually telling them something that's like, you're not so great at this skill or this task. But I would advise against that. Like, give them an honest answer, but what they really want to hear is the thing that you struggle with, but also what you're doing to work on that. So like if I have a weakness, I feel like I'm disorganized or I have a hard time staying on track, they may want to hear that I'm working on that by like keeping an organized calendar, setting reminders for tasks, asking my supervisor to remind me of important deadlines and hold me accountable, things like that. So some advice I would give you if you have an interview, or if you're just thinking about ever having a job in the future, is taking an inventory. What are my strengths? So these could be things that you do well, like customer service, work skills, but it can also be like a personality trait. Like I'm a team player. I have a lot of empathy for people. I'm always punctual. It's good to just keep an inventory in your mind of what you're good at, what you do well, and that can help build your confidence so you feel confident going into an interview. And on the flip side, it can be good to keep an inventory of things you may struggle with, or weaknesses you may have, like if you struggle with punctuality. So you can continually be working on those things and be aware of them. Because no one's perfect. Everyone's going to have a weakness or have something they're not great at. What employers really want to see is that you can recognize that in yourself and that you're willing to work on it. Darius, what do you think about that?
I think it's good to keep like how you said, a book of like I wouldn't necessarily say like open-ended like answers, but have something where it's like, okay, yeah, this is a weakness of mine, but I'm gonna not I'm gonna, but I fix it by doing this.
Mhm.
Um, like a good one that you said was is that I know sometimes I am very forgetful, but I ask my supervisor for deadlines. I think that's a real good one, and that's just something I've always thought too. Is like, yeah, even though you can always get an open-ended question that can be negative, you can always turn it into a positive.
Mhm. Definitely, definitely. So these are some questions you can kind of be thinking about and prepare yourself in the interview process. But another good thing to do is to just Google common interview questions for certain types of interviews, or to look on glassdoor.com if you have, a certain company you're interviewing with. There may be other people have put their interview experiences in there, so you can know like what they went through in their interview, what kind of questions they asked. That's a really great resource, and that's glassdoor.com. So an important part of the interview process is you asking the employer questions, not just them asking you questions and you answering. So what should you ask in a job interview? So it's good to have questions that shows that you are prepared, that you are engaged, and that you do need to know if a company or a position is a good fit for you. So you may want to know about things like a flexible schedule, or am I going to be required to be on call in this position? Or what, is the culture? So it's good to be prepared with questions, even if you feel like the employer answers your questions during the interview. I would always have at least one or two questions that you ask, just to show that you're engaged in the process and that you're paying attention and that you're, enthusiastic about the interview process. So Darius, what are some things you would want to know? Say you have a job interview for a football team next week. What would you want to know about that job or about the team, the employer, before you accepted an offer?
For me, I agree with one of you. Is like I would ask like, what's the average day? Like if I'm coming into work tomorrow, what do I need to look forward to? Just to keep yourself on P's and Q's, because one, this is the place where you're going to be working. So you would want to know like what's the day in the life. Um, so something like that. But also, I also would ask, if you don't know beforehand, ask about your compensation and about hours, because you may have a kid, or you may have certain situations to where you're going to need to know how much you're getting paid, because if you're leaving one job to accept another, you don't want to lose money or take a pay cut, ideally. um, and also for days of the week, like I said, if you have kids or you have prior engagements, like for me, I was playing flag football, so I would have to like get off of work at like 5:40 or like 5 o'clock in order to make my game. So that's something that you always want to keep in mind, is always ask about hours of the week, and then also pay.
Yeah, so you can be clear about what you're signing up for. Some things that I always ask are about an agency culture, meaning like how do people relate to each other? Are things kind of casual and laid back? Or are they like really strict about things like coming in at a certain time, leaving at a certain time? Is it more flexible? Like you just need to get your work done within certain work hours, things like that. I always ask, and this is a good zinger, employers like this, um, if there was any experience that they felt like I didn't have, or any concern they had about something I lacked that you would need for the job. I also like to ask, what qualities does it take to be successful in a role? So you can get an idea of, what kind of person they're looking for. And am I that kind of person? Do you need to be really outgoing and talkative for this job, but you're really a huge introvert and that's going to give you a lot of anxiety? It'll tell you that may or may not be the best fit for you. So there's a couple that you can kind of just always have in your back pocket, just to be engaged, be prepared, and have more knowledge about what you're getting going into a job. So yeah, just some sample questions to ask. Darius mentioned, like, what's a typical work day or week look like in this position? Like I said, what skills or characteristics does someone need to be successful? What do you think are the biggest challenges? What would you like to see the person in this position accomplish in the first 30, 60, or 90 days? That can be a great question. Or what is the company's vision for the next year, 3 years, or 5 years? Companies love when you're thinking beyond just the interview, and you can know if your personal goals and your professional goals align with, what the company wants to do. Because you may get, hired into a role and then the company goes in a different direction that's not really, ideal for what you're thinking. So those are all good things to know and good questions to kind of just have on you, have in your mind. So a last thing I want to talk about is confidence, because nerves can be, like, they can really get in the way of a successful job interview if you can't get past it. So it's a good practice to be working on your confidence on an everyday basis, because we're not expecting you, if you totally lack confidence in your day-to-day life, just to build confidence for a job interview. So what are some things you can be doing on a day-to-day basis? So Darius, when I say confident or someone is confident, what does that make you think about them?
When I think of like confidence, I think of someone who you can be. What's crazy in my opinion is that when people, usually the general, like, think of confident, they think of someone who's like, like, I wouldn't necessarily say like loud, but what I'm trying to say is that you can be a confident person and not say like a word at all. You can be confident just by how, you are with your presence, how you present yourself. You can also be confident through like some of the words you say. So that's what, like, when I really like think of like the word like confidence, I think of someone who's like strong, someone who's like not easily rattled, just someone who's also prepared as well. So just something that doesn't get away from them.
So prepared, a lot about how you present yourself, maybe things like your posture, eye contact, smiling, can all, be part of a confident presentation. Just being that you're comfortable in your own skin, you're comfortable in the setting, and you're easy to talk to for the interviewer. So some exercises you can do to be building your confidence on a daily basis. One is to create positive affirmations. So for example, a positive affirmation is like something you can say to yourself. And this is where that inventory of strengths that you have kind of comes in. So sorry about that. So that inventory of strengths, like knowing things that you're good at, knowing positive qualities that you have, can come into play. So if I know that I'm organized, I am kind, I'm a good team player, those are things I can repeat to myself every day, and repeat before an interview. So I feel really good when I'm saying it. Another thing you can do is to question your inner critic. So we all have that little voice inside our head that's like, you're not good enough, you're not good at this, you're not good at that, you're not this enough, you're not that enough. So it can be a good exercise to question that voice. Someone gave me a tool, that little voice in your head, to kind of give her a name and make her into a little old lady on a rocking chair. So my lady's name is Moira. She sits in a rocking chair. She complains. When she's saying those things, I just like, be quiet, Moira. It's not your time to talk. So she's my inner critic, and I know how to make her be quiet. Another good practice is to set boundaries. It can help you build confidence if you're not saying yes to everything, if you are saying no when it's appropriate, if you're letting people know your needs. Some other stuff to practice self-care, whether that's exercising, taking time out of every day to do something you enjoy, like reading, taking care of your space, keeping your house clean, and like a stress-free environment. Those are all ways to practice self-care and to shift to an equality mindset where you're looking more at the things you have, the things that you're good at versus the things that you are not great at, and not comparing yourselves to other people and saying, oh, she's this, she's that, she has a nice car, she has more money, comparing yourself to someone based on those things. Darius, do you have any positive affirmations or like things that you say to build your confidence or or like, you know, give yourself confidence?
Yeah, actually, this past, I wanted to say I think it was past weekend. Yeah, something that I did just because I'm trying to do like more, I guess like self-motivation and like stuff like that, is that I wrote down like a list of things I want to be within myself. And some of the things I had wrote down was like, I want to be confident. I want to be, like take on more responsibility. I want to be, just a lot of positive stuff just to get myself in the positive mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the things I did. And like what I do is like I'll read that list probably, once every couple of days, and then just to remind myself that these are the goals I'm striving to get. And another good one that you had written down was practice safe care. Like now think about it, even though we are in like Corona, unfortunately, uh, but one of the things that was really like therapeutic and that made me like kind of like, do like self-care was like doing hiking trails and stuff like that. So yeah, just a lot of stuff. Like I realized the more you get to like reflect and like have time for yourself, the more confident you are in the person you are, which sounds crazy, but I promise it all makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Like building confidence doesn't happen all in one day. It's kind of the little things that you do on a day-to-day basis to build yourself up, make yourself feel good, and shift the way that you think about yourself and situations that you're in to a more positive way. Well, I love that you're doing that. Um, and just
Yeah.
the final topic is handling rejection. So rejection is going to happen when you're in the job searching process, when you're in the interview process. It happens to everyone. So some tools to help you move on from rejection and learn from rejection, because it is, it's part of growing up, it's part of your professional life, and it's going to happen in the job search, and it can really get in the way if you're going to let that hurt your mindset or make you give up. Just know that it's normal and it's going to happen to everyone. And then I just have a quick video about 4 tips for overcoming rejection, and that's going to wrap up our whole workshop. So I'm going to play this real quick.
Hello, my name's Gemma, and today I'd like to talk a bit about what happens when you don't get the job, because being able to bounce back from rejection is something which unfortunately we all have to deal with from time to time. In fact, I say from time to time, but actually over the course of my career, during which I've been not just a temp, but also a writer, an actress, and a presenter, I've had to accept that rejection is just part and parcel of life. Quite frankly, I'm used to it, and have learned that what counts is how you come back from it. So, if you've lost out on a job recently that you really wanted, don't feel down, and here come a few tips on how to move onwards and upwards. Number 1, rejection happens to everyone. If you've never been turned down or rejected for anything, I would go as far as to suggest that maybe you haven't tried hard enough to achieve your goals. You see, if you never put your head above the parapet, never give things a go or challenge yourself, then you can't be rejected. But that's not going to get you very far in life. So, in order to succeed, you need to accept that the road won't be completely smooth or without its bumps. That said, look at the most successful and inspiring person you know, and be assured that in the past they will have heard the words, "I'm afraid this time your application hasn't been successful, but we wish you well." To inspire you further, let's look at a few examples of fairly successful people who've been rejected. J.K. Rowling, arguably the most famous living writer, received 12 rejections from different publishers for Harry Potter. That's 12 publishers who turned down the chance to publish the books, which have generated about 450 million quid's worth of sales, rather than me. Simon Cowell turned down Take That, and Elvis was told after an early performance to stick to truck driving. Einstein was expelled from school, Bill Gates' first business flopped, and Marilyn Monroe was once told to go away and be a secretary because she didn't have what it took to be a model or an actress. You see, rejection doesn't mean that you're not cut out for the kind of job you're going for, just that you need to go again. Number 2, ask for feedback and learn from it. Okay, so you didn't get the job, but maybe finding out why could be really helpful in future interviews. So consider asking for feedback. Any employer worth their salt will be happy to provide it. They might simply say that on this occasion, someone else was a slightly better fit or had more experience. Or they might tell you something more specific, and that information could be really useful going forward. If you can turn the process of being interviewed into a useful learning opportunity, then you're the winner anyway. So don't take rejection to heart. Think objectively and concentrate on building on your core strengths so that you'll have more chance of getting the next job you go for. Number 3, be philosophical. I can remember at least 3 different occasions in life when I really wanted to get a job I'd applied for, but didn't. At the time, I felt crushingly disappointed for a short while. It felt like the end of the world. But what's interesting is that in the fullness of time and with hindsight, I've always been able to recognize that not getting those particular jobs was for the best, because something else came along which suited me better. And the same will happen for you. And there's great comfort to be taken from the old adage, things happen for a reason. Number 4, onwards. Right. If you've suffered a rejection, I'm allowing you 1 duvet day, 1 session in the gym that's a bit angry. Spin classes are great for this. 1 moan to your mother or your mate down the pub, whichever you prefer. But that's all you've got. Like I've said before, the thing which counts with rejection is how you move forward from it. So it's time to take a leaf out of Taylor Swift's book and shake it off. And then start making plans to conquer the world. Good luck, and I'll see you soon.
So great advice for handling job rejection, which we know is just a part of life. Basically, it's a part of your job search and it's perfectly normal. Darius, have you ever been rejected from a job? I have.
Oh, obviously. I feel like everyone has. But yeah, I have as well.
But what's important is your ability to bounce back. So that concludes our workshop on interview skills. We've recorded this and we will be sending it out to our participants. If you are not enrolled in the Re-Engagement Hub, we would love to work with you. There will be some contact info however we send this out. You can have a career coach, you can have peer support workers, and have access to workshops like this. So thanks so much to Darius, and everyone have a great day. We look forward to seeing you again.
All right, see you guys.
Goodbye.